sculpture by nature. We were on the Dome Glacier a couple years ago, and we had spent the morning exploring the left side and discovered nothing. And so after our break at the head of the glacier, we decided to go down the right side. And lo and behold, we got to this point where we had to crawl under this mammoth snow uh, snow sculpture. And when I got underneath it, I turned around and I just fell in love with the lines, the textures of this sculpture. So I pointed my camera up. That black is actually the sky. I'll touch on this in a bit. There's an easy way, or relatively easy way to turn your on those bluebird days, to turn your sky blue almost instantly within the conversion process. So anyways, I ended up capturing that photo, and it turns out to be one of my, to this day, that was about 2-3 years ago, my favorite photos. And in fact, it was actually picked up by a boutique magazine and publishing outfit in Banff called, the outfit is called Crowfoot Media. And this was published as the full page photograph next to the table of contents in their last edition of the Canadian Rockies Annual. Moving on to now, when we're in the field and looking for how we can create a compelling black and white story, when we lose the advantage of color, or when we lose a story of color, and in the Rockies, there's so many great stories, be it sunrise, sunset, the emerald green lakes, the blue lakes, the fall colors, on the prairies. There's obviously the canola fields are popular. There's so much color in our world, and there's a lot of compelling images. But when we lose that color, we need to look to other key storytelling elements in photography. And when I was studying in university and elsewhere, the way I remembered is I could create an acronym and help me remember things. So in this case, I created the acronym called tonality, and it really describes, in my humble opinion, the key characteristics of black and white images. You don't need all of these. I would argue, though, that you need the first one. I don't believe in, I'm not an advocate or a believer in photography rules or photography guidelines for that matter. I believe everything that we have at our disposal is just a tool and our toolkit, and we pull it out when we need to, when we feel it helps tell our story. But if there's a closest thing that comes to a rule in black and white photography, is making sure that you have sufficient tonal contrast. And I'm going to touch on this more in the editing process, but really what that means is finding images that have everything, or have the ability to, or the opportunity to generate your blacks right through to your pure whites. And you can achieve that by finding those in nature and looking not at color, but looking at for tones. And that means dark tones to light tones and everything in between. And so that's the most important piece. And then from there, you'll find you'll get into a number of these components together. You can have, I talked about tonal contrast. These are just two extreme examples of tonal contrast. In the one on the left, I have pushed my limits, and in fact actually have blown my blacks in this photo, the sky, and to some degree the ice on the lake. And I've done that just to create the story and to focus everybody on the methane bubbles that are on the lake. And basically, just quickly, a methane bubble is, you can find them in any lakes where there's rotting material at the bottom of the lake, and literally the material farts and up comes a bubble, and as the ice freezes from top to bottom, the bubbles get trapped in the ice, creating a layering effect. This was taken on one of my wild ice skating days, where we were the first people, or one of the first people, on Spray Lakes, and were able to get the pristine reflections and pristine ice. The other end of the spectrum in creating tonal contrast is having a very highlight oriented photograph. In this case, this photograph was taken high up on the mountains on a hike up to Sparrowhawk Tarns, which is really a tarn is a small glacial lake or a small mountain lake. They're almost the size of a pond, really. And we made it to the first lake barely, as when we first got there, we had to walk through parts waist deep snow. So we didn't proceed onwards and upwards to the second and third tarn because it was snowed in. But after shooting a number of different things, I looked across the lake and up on Mount Sparrowhawk and saw this unique structure that nature had created in terms of the way they melted the snow. So for me, this image was really about that. I've heard Star Trek-like emblem. I've heard a bird. I've heard the jet stream coming from a jet. Anyways, that image to me was really about that piece and those two trees that are just up in the top right or center right. And so I shot it with the purpose of pushing it as far right as I could, and then in post, I made sure that I created as close to white as I could in there. On screen, you're probably seeing that all those highlights are blown and you can't see any texture, when in reality, when you print this, there is actually plenty of texture in there that keep your interest, but at the same token, to really focus the viewer's eye on that image, which is the story, which is really the scree, the rock, and the trees. And then everything else in between when in creating tonal contrast. The second one is obvious symmetry. Color can be a distraction when story can be about symmetry, and the most obvious symmetry that we find in nature is mirror-like reflections. This is Mount Chester on our hike into Chester Lake in July. My wife and I went in there the night before. Actually, it had rained down below, but up high, it actually had snowed. So in the middle of July, we were able to actually get a snow-capped mountain, which really helped to add the contrast. The next one is a need for shapes. Again, if the story is really about a shape, and in this case, it's actually that item there is a ice structure with snow on top in a creek, and I shot at a very long exposure or a longer exposure to create that blurring effect in the reflection, and then I blacked out the bottom of the creek just to focus again the viewer's eye on the shape of the shape in there, which is to me it mimics a peak in the mountains, and so that's why I shot it that way. But black and white helps really tell the story of shapes. And interestingly enough, if you read some of the psychology behind shapes, triangles are some of the most interesting shapes that how in any art form, whether it be any visual art form, being a painting, a sculpture, or a photograph, they help really lead the viewer through the photo is sort of one idea, and the other is they're very balanced, and they bring a sense of stability to a photograph. Abundance of mood. So I find when you want to create a moody photo and tell a story of mood, black and white does a very good job of that. And in this case, this is Gap Mountain in Kananaskis country. After a escapade with my tripod, I had to return to the spot to see if I could find it, and I didn't. But what I did find was this scene unfolding at the very end of the day, and creating a very moody, with a dark looming sky, the sun peeking through behind me, creating a moody lighting pattern on the mountain. Lines. I think we often hear about lines in photography. Leading lines, where they're a component of the story, where they help you lead you through the image, but the ultimate story is something else. But that line leads you into it. The other thing is where the story itself is all about the lines. And to me, this when I we were exploring the Stutfield Glacier in January, and for ice caves. And although we didn't find any ice caves, what we did discover was the way nature had carved out these massive ice walls and curves, because the creek or the river that flows out of there when the ice melts in the summer created these massive walls and in a curving S pattern. And so when we came across this guy, heavily textured piece of glacial ice and then these converging lines in the snow, I pulled out my wide angle lens to sort of augment that or to exaggerate those curves, and just felt that the whole story was really about these lines leading you right through the whole image and converging in the middle and then ultimately at the end, and and having this great textured pattern in the glacial ice. So this is a perfect example of having tonal contrast, lines, and textures in in one image. Ideal lighting. For me, uh, as in photography in general, there's always the definition of what one definition of what photography is painting with light. And so for me, black and white images with the right ideal lighting, which for me, I find the best lighting to be the late fall through to middle of the spring, where the sun is relatively low on the horizon, um, and creating those nice shadows. And I'll talk about shadows in a moment. Uh, but also the time of day though that's great lighting is about 2 hours after sunrise and about 2 hours before sunset. Although in the winter, at least in the Rockies, there's ideal lighting throughout the course of the day because the sun is so low on the horizons. And because it's so low, it can cast some great shadows uh, because it can be lower than the mountains or just at the mountain, even in the middle of the day. So ideal lighting is another key story to tell in black and white photography. Textures. We talked. There's this photograph about textures. This here actually is a photograph taken yesterday. It's never been seen before. I haven't published it yet. But what it is we scrambled up Mount Michener in along the David Thompson Highway and sent in the Central Rockies, just west of Rocky Mountain House, about a 1,200-meter climb in roughly 3 kilometers, 3 or 4 kilometers. And so it's quite a steep climb up. But when we got up there, Lake Abraham or Abraham Lake below us had these very cool ice and snow patterns. The black and the gray is really ice, and then the white is snow. And so I set out to capture that um, using the only lens that I had, which was my 24 to 70. So I had to crop in a bit and then create this pano effect. But black and white for me can really help tell a story of textures and not let color get muddled in that story. And then the final objective in the field when you're looking for black and white photography is shadows. And like I say, ideal lighting and shadows go hand in hand. But some stories tend to be more about the shadow. And then for me, this photograph, I was driving up to Jasper along the Icefield Parkway to meet a friend to go camping 4 years ago. And I looked up and saw the late afternoon sun peek through the cracks in the mountains and just created this magnificent shadows on this ridge. And so I had to jump out. I basically pulled my vehicle over, rolled down my window and pulled out and I'm going to talk about equipment here in a second. My favorite lens at the time for photography was my 70 to 200, and shot this. Unbeknownst to me that We've heard of bear jams along the Icefield Parkway in the mountains. Well, I created a landscape jam because as people were approaching me from both sides of the highway, they were looking at me to see what I was photographing and thinking I was photographing an animal, but in reality, I was photographing a landscape. And so realizing this, that I was causing a potential traffic jam, I quickly captured it and moved on. But for me, the shadows are, the shadows really help define the ridges and the snow capped ridges. And so black and white is a perfect opportunity for telling the story of shadows. Speaking of equipment, I often get this question, so I thought I would throw in this one slide. I use a variety of lenses, but I would say primarily I use the bottom, the 24 to 70, but it's generally 50 and over, and 70 to 200. And then my most recent, in the last couple of years, favorite lens is my 100 to 400. I just love those tight shots that you can get in. The landscapes, the vistas in the mountains are fantastic and amazing to look at. But when I put my eye up to my viewfinder, because I'm still old school in the DSLR world, um, I just see a lot of noise and busyness in those landscapes. So I struggle as a photographer to capture the big, wide, sweeping vistas. And so I either do one of two things. I pull out my telephoto lens and zoom in, or often when I do pull out my 14 to 24, it is in a tight area and playing with perspective and playing with lines and whatnot to try to capture a more tight wide angle shot. Obviously a tripod, because I do, as in this example to your right, I do a lot of long exposure because I believe long exposure and black and white are like a fine port and blue cheese. They just belong together. Filters in the Rockies. There's a lot of reflective glare light, so bouncing around out there. So I always carry a polarizer, and I'll just touch on it. And the one advantage to the circular polarizer on those bluebird days where the sky is pure blue and you don't have any interest in it, and you want to, obviously we try to minimize the amount of sky we put in a photo, or that's the general tool that we're given. But one way to easily darken that sky to almost pure black is to pull out your circular polarizer and polarize it to its max, where the sky is that really unnatural dark blue. And when you flip it to black and white, it almost is black. Now I have the luxury, or I use Silver FX, which has got the filters, the old school type of filters that black and white photographers used to use, like yellow, red, green, and blue, and orange, which basically what that does is if it's a warm filter like a red, it'll block out all the cooler light, blue toned light, like the sky, and make that darker, and then allow the lighter tone or the warmer tone light to be lighter to help create that contrast. And so if I polarize my bluebird sky, as in the case of that first photo that I showed you, and then put that red filter on it, it basically instantly turns it black to help create that tonal contrast in post-processing to make your life a lot easier. The flip side is if you use a blue filter, it darkens the warm tone light and lightens the lighter blue toned, cooler tone light. For my longer exposures, I used to carry the Lee system, but I found it for a lot of the off-road adventure stuff to be too bulky and not so much heavy, but very bulky. So I purchased a Nisi and neutral density filter package that has those four those 4 filters in it, and it's as bulky as or less as my Lee system, and they're screw on. And as long as I flip my viewfinder closed, I don't get any of the magenta or color casting in my photograph. And I just find because it's screw on and off, it's so easy to use those filters. And then the other question I get is, do I shoot in black and white when I'm in the field, or do I shoot in color? The answer to that is I shoot in RAW, which means I will flip my camera to black. I can at times flip my camera to black and white, but all that does is show me on the LCD what it looks like in black and white. And because it's raw, it hasn't had any processing done, so it'll look relatively flat. But I have grown accustomed to know, and by looking at the histogram and in the photo, what I can and cannot do in processing. And because it's got all the raw data, I have ample opportunity to push my editing around. If you shoot in JPEG and flip your camera to black and white, that's it. You're in black and white, you're done. You don't have the option of getting home and going, hey, darn, I wish I would have kept, I want to process in color. You don't have that option with JPEG. So that's why the other reason I always shoot in RAW is because I might get home and think, well, you know what, this looks better in RAW or in color. Not seldom do I do that, but there are times. So the other way you can do it to get a bit of sense of what the contrast will be like is you can shoot raw JPEG and shoot your smallest JPEG possible, and that will allow you, because it's JPEG, the camera will give it some contrast, give it a bit of clarity to help you give it a sense of what the tonal contrast will be. And then you simply look at the JPEG in the back of your screen to see what it's going to look like. And then you have the ability, you have the raw file to process with. I don't do that because my camera is 36 megapixels and it's already a memory hog. I keep the external drive companies in business. So I don't need any additional memory use. So I always just shoot in RAW, and I've gotten used to, like I say, what I can and cannot do in processing by looking at the back of the screen. Okay, I think this is a natural point where I can stop and I can look at the chat and if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop in now or just write it in the chat. If not, I can move on.
I think there's the one question in the chat that asked you, which kind of camera did you use between your Instamatic and your DSLR?
Yeah, I saw that. I used point and shoots. I never was a film. I never got into. Well, no, that's not true. One vacation in Europe. I spent 2 years in Scotland, and at the end of my term in Scotland, my work term, friends and I did a tour of Europe. I borrowed my dad's 35 millimeter camera, but for all intents and purposes, I had one lens. Didn't really know much about how to use it properly, so it was effectively a point and shoot. So all I used was a point and shoot up until that point. And then my Kieran was born in 2005, and we had to switch from point and shoot to a DSLR just to capture the just a bit faster shutter speeds to capture the little monkey. So.
Dana and Trevor on the left-hand side, can you shut your video off? That way we can watch Lee talk, but not have to watch you guys eat. Awesome.
Are there any other questions? If not, I can move on.
I think you can move on.
Okay, I'll just go back to sharing my screen. My editing process. So I know editing can be a bit controversial. I'm always transparent and upfront in how I edit. I edit purely for art. I shouldn't say I've never done it, but I very seldom do I do documentary photographs. So I edit for art. Now, if I enter a competition, I obviously will check the competition's rules to make sure I follow them for competition purposes. But for my stuff that I want to hang on my wall or that I sell clients, I post on social media, I edit to my style and my vision. And so just as a point of reference, though, that is pretty much what you see in camera. What you see on the screen is what happened in camera, other than I will remove distracting elements. As long as they're not key elements, I will remove distracting elements using Photoshop to do that. So in my humble opinion, if you're shooting for art, the only restriction is your vision of what you want in terms of your portfolio and in terms of that photograph. Uh, Often, like I said, I mentioned earlier, one of the best ways I've learned to understand what great contrast and what works as your great opportunity for black and white photograph is I've gone through numerous color photos, and largely at the beginning of my black and white career, and just see what works and what doesn't work. But now I'm at the point now where when I'm in the field and I see a shot, I pretty much know right away whether I'm going to edit it in black and white or in color. So I pre-envisioned, and not only do I know whether I'm going to edit black and white, I roughly know how I'm going to edit it in terms of tonal contrast, those points that I'm going to emphasize, those points that I'm going to de-emphasize, and to ultimately tell the story that I want to be told by that photograph. And how I've gotten to the point of my editing process is really I've understood it's really self-taught through watching a few YouTube videos early on, and then just talking to other photographers and understanding their editing process and adapting mine accordingly, and getting feedback from other photographers on my photographs and my editing, and made those changes where I think that they've been helpful. So that's really how I've gotten to my editing philosophy and my editing process.
Can you interrupt for a second? Can you go back to your slides, like we're seeing your PowerPoint presentation?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, my bad. Yeah. In terms of my editing process, the tools I use, it all starts in Lightroom. My Lightroom is both my database manager as well as my editing, a key editing tool. If you're not familiar, but Silver FX is a NIC-based plugin for Lightroom. That becomes one of my main sources to edit in black and white. I'll get into why in a moment. I just feel the big reason is presets and their sliders work much more effectively than Lightroom does. And then I finish my process off in Photoshop. Really there's a quick description of what I do in each of those tools, and then I'll get to them in more detail in a second. In terms of the image on the right-hand side, that's actually an ice cave adventure in December at the Saskatchewan Glacier. So I talked about that briefly. When we arrived there, I fell instantly in love with the cornice that sits on top of the glacier wall there in the front. And so we went in, we explored the cave. We were mesmerized by the blues tones in the cave, and it was this massive cave. So we spent about a half an hour exploring it. But then once we were done that, I knew instantly I wanted to go back out to the front of the cave and shoot this cornice. And when I got there, I looked closer and I found what I described to me as a whale-like looking structure at the bottom, which is a big stack of ice that has just been snowed upon and just accumulated snow. And so I decided to incorporate it in the photo as well. And then just to create a bit of interest and a bit of the what the heck is going on question, I completely whited out, or almost whited out, the sky in the middle. That's just blue sky. Instead of making it black, I decided to go the other way and white it out just to create a bit of what the heck is going on here more from an abstract perspective. Okay, so now I'll talk about I'll go through my editing process in some detail. As I mentioned, and this is a photograph that I took 2 years ago up in Yoho National Park. It's actually at one of the fossil shale sites, Walcott Quarry. I was tail guiding for an outfit up there that takes tourists up there and explains all about the 500 million year old fossils. And that's Mount Wapta in the background there. And that was just the afternoon sun was shining on it and creating some nice highlights and shadows. So I quickly grabbed my camera to capture this moment. And so I'll just walk you, using this photograph, I'll walk you through my process. Really, it begins in Lightroom, and then I'll look at the histogram up in the top right and see where we're at in terms of the distribution, overall distribution of pixels. If it's a little under or overexposed, I'll fix that up. Now, I don't mean blowing the highlight. I shoot to the far right as I possibly can in most of my photographs so that I can recover the shadows. So when I say overexposed in terms of, or underexposed in terms of what I want for look and feel, I'll quickly make those adjustments in Lightroom. And then I go into there, I can go in and select edit in Silver FX, and it flips me right over into Silver FX. And here I'm going to stop for a moment and touch upon one of the biggest learnings I had by virtue of a well-known photographer and a friend of mine take the time out of his busy schedule and send me a note a few years ago. And that is often I find, because I also steward or an administrator for Tones of Place, which is a Facebook black and white page. And I find often people that are just starting out on their journey in black and white will just push the conversion button and maybe touch up a bit of contrast and clarity and then feel they're done. And you'll get photographs that look muddy like this one. All I did was, by virtue of going into Silver FX, it automatically converts it to black and white. And you get what I describe as a muddy or very flat looking image. And so for my taste and in my vision of the photographs, I spend a lot of time fixing up. I make sure I can get as much tonal contrast as I can in the field. But then I spend time in the editing process through global adjustments and also a lot of dodging and burning to make sure that I get the tonal contrast I want and the look and feel I want. So if there is a message that those that are just beginning in their black and white career, or those that are struggling with taking black and white photographs and getting the tonal contrast, is experiment with what you like and don't be afraid to push the blacks and to push the whites. Because in some cases, as in the blow-on blacks and blow-on whites can work. More so in the blacks and the whites, but there are stories that can be told where you have blow-on highlights and blow-on blacks. And so that's one rule. That's another rule where we say we got to keep everything within the histogram. Not necessarily in the case of black and white photographs. I think you have the opportunity to push them. You can't go over the top, but you can push them to get the look and feel that you want in an image. So I'm going to show you how I go about doing that. So the first thing that I like to do is on the left-hand side in Silver FX is there's a number of great presets. In this case, I selected the grad filter just to help give that sky a bit more pop. It blackened a bit of the top of the peak, so I had to go back in and I'll touch on that in the Lightroom section and lighten that up a bit just to make it look a bit more realistic. But I just wanted to use, in this case, I wanted to use a grad filter to give a bit more contrast in that sky. The other ones I like to use are the full dynamic range, and sometimes I'll use high structure, which is, in the words of structures, the same as clarity in the words of Lightroom. So once I've selected my preset, then I go to, and you'll notice that it's almost turned the sky black because I polarized the sky. It wasn't quite 90 degrees, so I didn't get the full polarization effect, but I did get some, and you'll notice that by using the red filter, which is the color filters, which I explained earlier, in the bottom right there, I was able to blacken the sky, almost blacken the sky, at least the top of the sky. So that's the next thing I do in my process is select the filter, And then this is one of the biggest advantages I love about Silver FX versus Lightroom or even Photoshop, at least my knowledge of Photoshop, is it's got Ansel Adams zone system at the very bottom. And what that is it's numbered from 0 to 10. And in each of those boxes represents a zone within his Ansel Adams tonal contrast range system. So basically 0 is your blacks, your pure blacks, 10 is your pure whites, and then everything in between is a shade of gray. From your dark blacks or your dark grays to your light grays. And so you can if you touch on each of those zones, it'll show you where it'll show you where the pixels are in that zone. So in terms of one, you'll see up here in the top right, it's got yellow. Those are where the nines are. There wasn't any tens in this photo at this point in time, but there was some nines up in the top right and in the mountain here and onto the left here. And in terms of the whites, the nines, this is a blue here, which is almost pure white. There's a bit of blue here. So what this tells me from a visual point of view, based on pixels, is there's still quite a bit of work I need to do because I need to get a few pure blacks in there and I'd like to get some whites in there. And I'd like to push some of maybe my grays around just to get it to look and feel the way I want it. So this is probably the filters and the preset filters and the red filters are good, are reasons I love Silver FX. The biggest reason is this zone system. I just love the fact that I can visually look at a photograph and see where my pixels are from a tonal contrast point of view. So then once I'm done that, I then will go and if I need to, I'll start to use the S-curve or make some global adjustments here, basically pushing around the curve here at each end of the spectrum. So I'll push around my blacks, I'll push around my whites just to touch up the tonal contrast. Then I move up to the top right side and push around the sliders. The other great feature that I love about Silver FX is you get to push around your midtone. You got a slider for midtones. And then your contrast, you've got sliders for your whites and blacks. And structure, you've got, which is clarity, you've got sliders for all three. So that really helps to hone in on certain areas and it helps reduce the amount of dodging and burning I have to do. So I'll go through from top to bottom and adjust those sliders based on largely, I shoot and edit according and listen to my heart and stomach. My brain, other than looking at the graphs, my brain is not involved in this whole process. It's really based on what I feel in my stomach and what I feel in my heart. If I get excited by it, I will stop. If I don't, then I'll continue to work on it. The next global adjustment I make is basically grain. For the most part, I use a small 500 grains per pixel and very soft pixels. So then I will go through my basically my the sliders for your red, yellow, green, your color filters. Basically what it does is for each of those colors, it lightens or darkens that color of light or that tone in that color of light in your photograph. So once I'm done all of that, basically I go back and I look at my zone system again, and I see, from a pixel point of view, where is it at? Is it where I want it to be? And in this case, it was. And so you can see how just by going through this part of the process takes me probably 15, 20 minutes now. I've got it down pat pretty quick, even if it might even take me less time than that. And so you can see how we've taken a muddy, very flat image, just by choosing a couple filters. We've pushed the pixels around a bit to create a more contrasty image, and then ultimately creating a much more compelling black and white image by moving the sliders around and creating your final Silver FX image. Remember, this is not the final image because I got to go into Lightroom and do my dodging and burning. So I'll hit the save button, and lo and behold, it takes you right back. It flips the image right back into Lightroom, and then I can start my dodging and burning. And this image here or slide is just to illustrate how much dodging and burning I've done. Each of those circles represents a brush that I've done. So for example, on the brush on the left-hand side in the sky, those clouds, if you look, they're not, they weren't, they were still quite gray, and the clouds on the right were off balance with each other because one was quite bright because of the way the sun was shining, and one had some shadow. So I had to lift the brightness of the clouds on the left and reduce the brightness a bit on the ones on the right, just to create a bit more balance to the photo. And then all those other brushes were used to create reduce the effects of the other image, so that I can create a compelling image. So I just went through that part. This is the highlighted area of the brush on the left-hand side, where the brush I used to highlight lifted the shadows and lifted the whites just to make those clouds pop a bit more relative to the ones on the right. Then once I'm done that, I then flip into Photoshop, and I will, as I mentioned, I will go in, I'll use these tools on the left there. I primarily use a spot healing brush tool or the patch tool with content aware, and I'll remove small distractions. This includes, I used to edit my photos, or used to edit or clean up my dust spots, and I spend way too much time cleaning dust spots. I'm not the poster child of how to take care of your equipment in the field. So often I spend way too much time cleaning dust spots, and I need to improve that part of my game. But anyways, I will clean. I used to do it in Lightroom, and then I went to print my exhibit, my below the peak exhibit, and my printer was highlighting to the fact that the Lightroom spot removal tool isn't as effective when you start to blow up your images in print, and they leave artifacts. And so he suggested, and this is one piece of feedback that I've gone, is I've now removed my dust spots using largely the spot healing brush tool in Photoshop, because it does a much more effective job, and it looks much more cleaner and more effective. I'll also use that same brush to remove small little distracting elements in the photograph. Then this is based on some other feedback that I got for social media. I will sharpen the image. I got another add-on called Raya Pro. I think it was like $60, and then it's a plug-in for Photoshop, and it's a mammoth add-on that you can do so much with. And I haven't even scratched the surface on what I can do with it. But for my purposes and for what I want, I primarily use two of the tools in it. One is sharpening for the web, and basically it's basically you'd either by width or by height. In this case, it would have been by height, and then you just type in the pixels that you want to sharpen to, and it push a button and it does it all for you. And out comes this great sharpened image for the web. And then, so in a lot of cases, if it's a textured image or primarily most of the time I use this, especially for textured images. The other one that I will look at using, although I use a lot less, and I use more regionally, I guess, within a photograph, is the Orton effect. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's really, if you look at those photos that are very dreamy, soft looking, That's called the Orton effect, and it basically just reduces the sharpness and it creates a really dreamy looking effect to the photograph. I will first of all hit that button, and then again you can adjust the intensity of the Orton effect that you want based on the number of pixels that it'll look at. I tend to go on the low side of that because for me and the look and feel I want, the images I take, I haven't found it used overly effective for the overall image, but I will take components of an image. So I'll do it overall, but then I will create a layer and brush out the parts of the photo that I don't want the Orton effect in. And an example would be where I have soft water, where I've used a long exposure to create that soft, silky water. I will augment that by creating the Orton effect and then doing another layer where I basically paint out the effect on the other component parts of the photo, the other part, the non-water part of the photo, so that I just got it going in the water. The final one, and again, this is a recent change. This is for my winter photos, along a lot of my ice photos and snow photos. I will, just to give them that cool effect, because ice and snow is cool, I will ever so slightly go and adjust the color balance. I will add, again, in Photoshop, you can adjust your color balances, which is really your white balance by your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows. And I will largely add like 2 or 3. I'll do it on I'll just ever so slightly add a bit of blue hue to my midtones and my highlights. I feel like my shadows should stay black. But in my midtones and in my highlights, I'll add ever so slightly a blue feel to it, just to give it that cool feel to the photograph. Then I jump back into Lightroom, make any more final global tweaks, very high level, very quick global tweaks. I crop it, and in this case, the ridge on the center left of the image I felt was a bit distracting. And the top of the sky was not adding a ton of value to this photograph, so I cropped it in a bit just to eliminate both those items and to create a slightly more balanced image. So this is the rough process of how I took this color image and turn it into what I like to feel is a nice black and white image with full tonal contrast in it. And it really showcases the highlights and the shadows of Mount Wapta. So before I jump into my video, here I'll jump into my video because it's a short video, and then we can jump into some questions. Does that work, Laura Lee?
Yep, that works fine.
Can you hear that?
We can hear it, but we don't. But we're still on the PowerPoint.
Oh, geez, sorry. I'm not very good at the sharing part today. My apologies.
Awesome. That's great. We could hear your music, but it was sounding a little bit wonky. Is the music in your slideshow, or are you playing it by a mic, or?
Yeah, I have to use it through my the only way I've been able to get it to work is through my microphone. So my
But it is built into your slideshow. Do you know about clicking that thing when you're sharing your screen on the left-hand side, when you have to pick your screen, there's a thing there that says share computer audio.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was on. So sorry about that. I apologize.
No, that's okay. We could hear it, and it was all good.
So just before I open the floor again to questions, I just want to touch on, I have if you want to learn more about black and white photography, I have as COVID friendly as I possibly can make it, workshop in June in Canmore. There's no better place, in my humble opinion, to take black and white photographs than in the Rockies. So it's based out of Canmore. And I also have some online portfolio review or mentorship programs. So with that, that's it. I'm more than happy to open the floor to questions. Do we have any questions from anyone?
There's a couple in the chat. One was, what is the advantage of doing cleanup, removing and cloning at the end after all adjustments are applied, as opposed to doing it at the beginning?
Great question. I just find in my process, it works most conveniently at the end. There's no necessary advantage to it. If you find that it works better at the beginning, then go for it. Certainly, you know, in the case, if it's something that specifically, like my spot removal, where, you know, I've just gone way too long without removing, you know, cleaning my sensor, and the spots are overwhelmingly distracting to even the editing the image, then I will do that first. But in most instances, everything is of minor nature that I don't need to do it at the beginning, and I find it just works best for me at the end.
Okay. There's also someone that asked, how well do you think presets work? I think you kind of.
So I've never used the presets in Lightroom, and I understand there's some new ones, and you know, for me, when it comes to editing and even in my equipment, unless I have a burning desire to change something, I generally don't change it. So I haven't looked at the presets in Lightroom, but I found the presets, some presets, not all of them, in Silver FX work quite nicely. And that's one reason why I like to use Silver FX, is their presets. Do you do any work with Silver FX? No, I haven't. No, I haven't used their film and grain presets. I find, for the most part, just the way the look and feel that I want for imagery, I haven't had the need to use them. The only thing that I use is I just generally just make my grain very soft and have 500 pixels, 500 per pixel, or however, whatever the scale is.
And you guys can turn your cameras on now so we can see you. Any other questions? I think a lot of people there have typed in how beautiful the imagery was. I was quite amazed by that mountain picture that you went through or whatever, and how much better it looked in black and white. That was really pretty.
Yeah, and really, if something you want to take away from that is the importance of editing in black and white and how important it is.
Mhm.
Just not simply pushing a conversion button.
Right, right.
By the way, Gordon, that's a beautiful image behind you.
Thanks very much. You're actually preaching to the choir here. I do a lot of work in black and white.
If there's nothing else, I appreciate your time.
Sure. If you don't have FX, you don't have FX. Does the black and white adjustment layer work well in Photoshop, followed by curves?
You know, I have a number of friends that edit their black and white imagery in Photoshop and are very happy with it. And so I haven't learned it because it's just the process that I followed, but I understand that the black and white conversion and using layering or just doing your global adjustments and then using Photoshop brushes works very well. I'm not sure if that's me doing the feedback.
I don't know. Figure it out. So you headed up to the mountains this weekend?
No, I was out yesterday. Well, no, actually I'm going tomorrow for a quick trip, but I was out for a very long day and very strenuous day, although an exciting and very beautiful day, but I got to rest this old body.
Have you ever had any near misses?
No, you know, I think I like to believe that our friend, the friends I hang out with, we're very safety conscious. A lot of planning goes into our adventures in terms of weather monitoring, surfing social media to understand the conditions in the specific area that we want to go in. For example, Mitchell yesterday, we monitored the weather conditions. We looked at photographs to see how the snow conditions were to make sure there wasn't going to be avalanche danger. And then as we go up or in or wherever we're going, we continually assess the risks and none of us are afraid to say, hey, this doesn't feel right to me. And we all agree that at that point we turn around. So never had any near misses. I've frozen my fingers a few times.
Oh,
I have to be very careful with that. But other than that, no.
I have a question for you, Lee.
Yes, sir.
So on that, the image that the NHL picked up, or the methane bubbles, is it a pretty small window? That's just at the beginning of the season when you get a freeze like that, where it's crystal clear?
Absolutely, it can be an extremely short season, and it's also lake dependent, and it occurs depending upon the weather. The ideal conditions are you get a flash freeze, you get cold weather with clear skies,
yeah,
for 3 or 4 nights, and then and no snow, right?
Right, so it's really at the beginning of the season then.
Yeah, there are lakes like Minnewanka, there are the big lakes like Lake Minnewanka or Abraham Lake that are that if they get a lot of wind, the season can be extended, and Lake Minnewanka doesn't freeze until the end of December, early January anyways. So, but this year was a very short season because, we got a flash freeze and then it snowed, right? So it is very, that's why we're from November to December, that's all we focus in on. And we're constantly monitoring social media and the weather.
Okay, so as soon as you see somebody post that image of skating on the ice, you're gone.
Well, or we like, we're a bit selfish. We like to be the first on there. So we'll just see, like a lot of people just take photographs of the lake itself.
Okay.
And even if there's a hint of ice there and the weather looks good, we'll head out and scout it out.
Okay, so are you based in Canmore?
No, I'm based in Calgary.
Okay, I just, because that Spray Lakes one, that's, as you know, just right up from town, so
Yep.
Easier to get to than making it from Calgary is a little more of a trip.
Yeah, no, I spend way too much time between here and Banff.
Okay.
just driving for the, but it's part of the deal.
Yep. That great images.
Well, thank you very much.
Awesome. Any other questions, or should we let them go and carry on to our theme, or?
Yeah, and by all means, I don't know if you have my contact information, Laura Lee, feel free to post it on your, you have a Facebook page or email it out. I'm always open for questions. If you get off this call and go, "Oh, shoot, shucks, I wish I would have asked that question," feel free to send it to me. I'm always open to answer. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can.
Yeah, I think you had all your contacts on your emails.
Yeah, so just feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
I'm always open for questions.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you so much. It was really wonderful and was really, really a great talk and covered all the things that I think we were looking forward to.
Excellent.
Awesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Now just get out and go shoot black and white.
Yeah, I was just thinking we need to have a field trip and make it based that everybody has to shoot black and white, that it's a black and white field trip. And I think that would be kind of a cool.
Absolutely. Because the worst case scenario is you shoot black and white for 3 months and you'll become a better color photographer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lee.
Have a great night.
Yep, you too. So Doug, I think we're on to you. And
Hey,
Ralph, I guess. Ralph, you're gonna
I'm here.
do the theme for us. So we've got I forget how many images he said.
We've got 14 images.
14 and it's almost 8:30. So sounds like about the right timing.
Does anybody remember what the theme was?
Special events.
That's what I thought.
Image number 1.
Do. Well, I think we know when this was taken and where it was taken. I like the balance of it. I like the leading lines as well. Bit of light in the sky is a nice touch. I think Laura Lee commented on how that was a thing she liked about our earlier slideshow images. Good balance to it. One thing I wonder about is the little red hearts kind of look lost in that little bit of grass there. That's just the way the picture is, I guess. The grass on the right is quite interesting. I don't recall seeing this spot when I was there. Nice and sharp, good balance to it. Like the blacks are quite black and the whites appear quite white. Open up to anybody else have any comments? No. Okay, I'll continue along. The leading lines in green are really good. And I like the way it punches into the green grass on the right. That's nice and lighting up the pole. So you really get led into your image. And you tend to wrap around and follow yourself, eyes back along the blue on the left. Whose image is this, Doug?
This one's Dana.
Oh, Dana, nice shot. Do you want to tell us a bit about it? I think I saw you were here. You have to unmute your mic if you want to. No comments? Fine. Go for the next one, Doug. Huh. Oh, geez.
Not sure whose image this is.
Yeah.
We know who's in it, but we'll assume he self-timered it. It's a fun photo. This guy must be a grandpa or something. One comment I find right off the bat is the book is a bit too bright and so is the face. I like the tones on the back of the hand. I'd like to see that more in the face, but that could have been adjusted if the person knew how to do things in black and white.
Looks like an announcement to me.
I think so. It's good. I like it. Innovative, special occasion. Guess it's babysitting, I guess. I wonder if the white hair is from all the babysitting now.
just become a grandpa? Oops.
Our daughter and her husband announced that they are expecting, by giving my wife and myself each a book with this similar title.
Mm,
So it does go for the moment, for sure.
very good, very special occasion. I like the way you've wrapped your lips around so you look like you have dentures or something, or don't have dentures in. It's well done. It's a nice touch. You got the Albert Einstein look going on there.
I had to push my walker up to the table too.
That's the spirit. That's the spirit. I like your exposure in the background in particular is really good. That's really nicely done. Did you just do the self timer and run around to the other side, or what'd you do?
That's how I did it. Yep.
Yeah, good. It's nice.
Pretty quick with that walker.
It took several tries to make it around the table.
You bash into those table legs, eh? I like the choice of the wrinkles in the forehead, those scrunched up there. Well done, well done.
Those are real, eh?
I know, eh? You don't have to Photoshop them, eh?
What was your lighting source there?
It was daylight through windows, and then there's a light over top of my head in front of me a little bit.
You did a good job. So when are they due?
I think it's early May.
It's not too far away, you know.
Well, certain people are in a bit of a tizzy. You know how that goes.
Is it the first grandchild?
This is number one.
Yeah.
So when you're finished with the book, is there an exam you have to submit, and do they mark it on a curve?
By the end of the book, I'm snoozing.
Oh, get used to that concept. Anyway, what's next, Doug? Well, that looks fun. That looks like a possibly, oh, it might be a wedding going on. I think I see the dude in the suit, and I might see a wedding dress going on back there. Very bright, perhaps a little overexposed, but I think this is probably called blazing equatorial sun going on here. Judging by the use of the umbrellas, so to keep the sun off. I like the colors in the foreground in particular. Kind of, it's interesting the way the colors almost fade to the back. I mean, the little boy at the front is just punch out bright, but you look at even the pink umbrella in the back, it's quite light in color. So you get this tonal shift moving through the picture. Might actually be cool in black and white, actually. Lots of action going on, lots of smiles. It looks like a really good special event image. Oh, I actually read wedding now. They got my act together here.
Yeah.
Actually moving to the back of the picture. So yeah, I think this is probably Annette. So I think she's shown some images from this wedding before. Does anybody have any other comments about it?
It's pretty
Annette
good.
here today?
Just like it's a difficult situation for sure, for how bright it is and how dark, you know, they are and the clothing is and stuff. It's would be a difficult one to capture. That's for sure. She did awesome.
Yeah, this is Namibia, the wedding that I went to 3 years ago now. And yeah, there's bright sun coming from above. The sun shines onto the sand, so it's bouncing from beneath as well. And they're stirring up dust actually, or sand, because they're dancing before this wedding couple as they leave the compound. So, and yeah, their dark skin tones don't help much either, because I really had to ramp up the blacks or to bring them more light into the dark areas.
It looks like the only ones that it looks like the groom and them you had to bring up quite a bit, but then they're under the shadow of the umbrellas, so they'd be dark, so it'd be pretty tough to get them exposed right when there's so much out in the sun.
Yeah, these images, actually the whole set took a lot of work to get that balance.
I think it's one of the problems when you parachute in as a photographer and you're in light conditions and conditions that are just not normal for you to work with, that you have, if you have a lot of time to practice, it would be handy, but sometimes you don't have the time. But you did a good job.
Thank you.
Well, that is an interesting composition. I like the smile on the girl's face. Choice of landscape is really quite interesting. I find my eyes just going back and forth all along the image. Nice and sharp, great detail. If you look at the detail on the wedding dress, I mean, especially in the lower part of it, it's just really nice. Nice and sharp details in the flowers. The blacks are blacks, the whites are whites, and the smile is very impish. Yeah, the comments from people, please.
The crop keeps the focus on the girl, so that's really good. We'd lose it if we saw all their faces.
It's definitely not the crop you normally expect. You go like, well, what happened to the other faces? But that's not the goal of the image. Whose image is this?
Denise Nielsen.
Ah, Denise. Denise, tell us about your picture and why you chose to do this.
This was, well, it's a special event because it's a wedding, but the real special event was this little girl actually smiling. She was her mother's maid of honor. So she was with us all day. And I think almost every picture I took of her, she was either looking off in the distance or sticking her tongue out or, you know, making a funny face or something like that. So we finally caught this one with a smile. But then her mom and dad were making they were having a conversation and they both had kind of a funny look on their face. So to celebrate the smile on the little girl, I just cut off their heads.
You know, that is one of the challenges when you choose to have a small child as a major part of a wedding party. You may or may not get the photos you want because they frequently don't want to smile or do things like stick their tongue out. So
yeah, and it's one thing if they're the, you know, the flower girl or something like that, but she was the maid of honor. So
I think it's lovely. It set a new a point for shins to shoulders in a panorama.
what did the bride and groom think of the image?
they really loved it. They thought it was really neat.
Good. Oh, well done. Well, that is a stunning image. I love the way they look like they're floating in the air. Like you can't tell their feet are actually on ground. It's pretty cool. Nice and sharp on the faces, but you can tell there's motion going on from the swirling dresses. That is really interesting. Love the depth of field, the background being totally out of focus. Great. Yeah. Almost looks like it's a composite of images stacked together. Perhaps it is. I don't know. The whites and the red lines, very good. And the red in the hair, nice. Good composition on the faces. Good skin tones all through.
Is the motion perhaps done on Photoshop?
Suspect. Whose is it? Image is it?
Wayne Dwornik.
This is mine. Yes.
Tell us about your image.
This was at the Latino Festival in Galt Gardens a few years back. And I really liked the composition, but I found the background too distracting. So actually I used another program, I think I mentioned it before, but now I can't remember the name of it, Photo X. And it's similar to Photoshop. So I used the filter they've got in there to blur things. The difficulty I found with this particular effect was that it would really, you had to be really careful brushing in. Otherwise you'd really get like it wouldn't separate from the dresses and the background. So you can see where I've struggled a bit with on the gal on the left, her back is actually kind of blurring out too. But so I started that in that program, then took it into Photoshop and did a bit more stretching on the stairs behind them. And yeah, so it was quite a bit of work just to get rid of a very distracting background. I did like the impression of them not being on the ground there. So that was kind of interesting result. I did take it one more step, but I'll maybe post that to the Facebook page for the group tomorrow and show you the 3 different steps. I took the background right out and put them against the sky, but I wasn't so happy with that. But anyway, I had some fun doing it. It was a challenge, but I loved the lighting I had that day. I'm very satisfied with that.
Yeah. Fun image. Well done.
Thank you.
Suspect it's another wedding or engagement or something going on here. Interesting choice of angle. I like the hand, the ring, all it being sharp. I love her face. I'm not sure if I like his nostrils, so to speak. But I like the idea that the hint of color on her dress down the bottom corner there kind of helps balance the color on the left a bit. The crop is interesting, nice and tight. Like the depth of field, nice textures on his shirt, the hand, and just fades away quickly to the faces. Nice tight crop. Yeah. Until she's looking into his eyes. Any other comments?
It is really nice. You could have them more like looking down and touching their foreheads or something if you were worried about, because I'm pretty sure this is a post picture. So if you're worried about looking up their nostrils, that's something you could do, is tilt their heads forward instead of look up at him. Sometimes it's hard. Those shots are hard if you're short, if you're shorter than they are. Sometimes it's better to get up on something a little bit higher and shoot down. So
I hear you. Yeah, the other thing is with his face, if he was to look a little bit more to the left, of course that would only get rid of his nostrils, but yeah, it's a good idea having her look down a bit. The one other thing I find a bit distracting is her fingertips. Maybe you could blur those a bit to keep the focus back to the ring.
Yeah, if her eyes had fallen shut or something, like Lily says, forehead to forehead, and then her eyes fallen shut. Because my eye wants to go to her eyes because that's naturally what we want to do, is look at their eyes, and they're totally out of focus, right? So if her eyes were closed or she's looking down, that's fine, or crop them out altogether. But for me, when I photograph ring shots like this, I want to see the hand come a little bit further down his arm to be more on the flat side of his arm there, as opposed to having to try to shoot, as a photographer, trying to shoot up, bring the hand down so it's more face, like at eye level.
Hard. This is a good, I like the shot too. Bronnie was, for those that aren't reading the comments, Bronnie is commenting that if you were to back up and shoot it with a longer lens, it would help with the compression and help things a little bit better. And what was the other thing you said, Bronnie? Hang on a second.
Make the hand size more.
It would make the hand not quite so large in the picture if you had a longer lens and you backed up. But it's all really hard to, you're concentrating on the ring and the hand and trying to get that right. And sometimes you can't, concentrate on exactly what their faces are doing. And yeah,
it's another example of you got a limited amount of time. You have your set of goals, and a lot of experience eventually gets you better and better. And this is definitely getting there.
Yep. I mean, her ring in her hand, that's like her ring to be that sharp is really, really good. Sometimes that's difficult to get.
Yeah. I'm sure she's happy with the image.
Mm-hmm.
Whose is it?
The man is very anonymous, isn't he? It could be exchanged.
This is Sigrid's.
Nice picture. Sigrid, you want to tell us about it?
Sure. This was just my sister-in-law's niece just got engaged, and I've never done engagement pictures before, so this was my first time. And I just wanted to play around. They actually had a professional photographer doing real engagement pictures a week after. So they were just playing around for me. So it was just kind of fun. I found pictures on Pinterest I thought were kind of cool and just kind of tried to copy them or put my own spin on them. So I appreciate all the comments because I would never know to. Actually, when you talked about the nostrils, brought me back to Park Lake when I was doing a photo with Laura Lee, and I was watching Branny on the ground. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then Laura Lee goes, don't do it that close. You're going to look up their nose. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I did do that here. So learning, it's just learning.
That's what a photo club's for, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, nice picture.
Thank you.
It's not a wedding for a change. Oh, I love the girl's hair. Ha! Good choice of lighting. I think the first thing I would have done, I know this is probably a bit of a grab in some ways, but it's just pull the blanket down so you can see the child's face. But you know what they're doing, you know what they're looking at, and they're obviously terrified of hurting the child. Good skin tones. I like the triangle effect of the three faces. Well, I guess technically it's four. I guess it's a diamond shape. The girl who's sitting on the couch with her bright pink shirt really draws your eyes over there. And then you naturally kind of go to where she's looking, which is down at the baby. Very young by the look of it. Nice tight crop. Actually, might even have cropped in tighter on the right. And perhaps a bit off the bottom just to get more right in on the subjects.
A square crop would have been kind of nice.
Yeah, I think so. What else does everybody else think?
Oh, I agree with the square crop. Yeah.
Beautiful photo though. Love the moment.
I think the expression I like the best is the girl with the funky hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's, the delight in her, you don't see her eyes, but you can tell she's delighted by what she's doing. And that kind of the fear in the girl in pink, like I'm holding this very delicate thing. You can tell she's kind of half terrified of what she's doing. Whose image is this, Doug?
We.
Is she here today?
Yeah, I'm here.
Tell us about your image.
This is my grandchildren, and this was taken almost 2 years ago. And this was the first time they saw their baby sister. So they could not see her in the hospital. I think they had some kind of whooping cough quarantine or something. So we opted for them to see her on FaceTime right out the day after she was born. She was born late on a Thursday night, and then this was them actually seeing her for the first time.
Yeah, is that the first time the other grandchild's held another grandchild?
Yeah, yeah.
You can tell the tentative look on just her body expression.
Yeah, the one that's holding her is 6, almost 7 in this picture.
It's really hard for the little ones to hold the little ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really hard to get those pictures. I think she's done awesome in this one.
It's hard to get big people to hold babies.
Yeah. And they are just totally in love with her. She will, like I said, be almost 2 next in a couple of weeks here. And I thought this would be a fun one to do recreations of as they get older.
Yeah, no, well done.
Mhm.
Hmm. Interesting. Boy, you really find your eyes just move around this image. I find I'm drawn to all the highlights. So you get this row of people going off to the from the left, progressing to the back. Then your eye tends to swoop around to the front right again. The bright yellow punches out. Almost looks like there's fires going on, but I don't think it is. I think it's just a yellow cloth in the middle there. All the eyes on the photographer is like, what is that guy doing? Looks like a challenging picture to take. It looks very bright, but there's also areas that are quite shadowed for them to photograph in. I find my eyes drawn frequently to the guy with the glasses over on the far left. He looks fascinating. That is cool. Don't know what the occasion would be. Any comments, please?
Those are fires, aren't they?
Yeah, no, look, I see a couple of the other, one right there, one there, yeah.
On the far left, you can tell those are
Yeah.
the fires.
Yeah, each group has like a fire pit in that
Yeah.
concrete block or whichever.
Interesting.
Bonnie wants to know if it's done on film when you talk to whoever.
Whose image is this?
Trevor.
Pardon me?
Trevor.
Oh, Trevor, nice shot. Tell us about your picture, Trevor.
It's a special event because it's a Mahayagna. Maha means great, big. So it happens every 7 years. It's in India. And they are, as you correctly saw, they are fire pits in front of everyone. And they're all looking at me and thinking, is this guy a Hindu? Right? Because only Hindus are allowed at this ceremony.
And was it shot in film? Was one of the questions Brandy asked?
It was shot on film. Yes. Indeed it was.
And are you a Hindu?
I'm not going to tell you. No, I'm not, which is why they're looking a little bit concerned, or some are.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, to get into these kind of things, you have to pretend you are.
Is this a strictly male ritual going on here?
It's strictly male, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Looks interesting. Thanks for doing it. Next image, Doug. Okay, we're going for the high contrast. I would find myself wanting more detail in the drummers. But the choices to make them silhouettes are not quite silhouettes, so it's different as well. You see the action with the raised up drumsticks. Cool, I like the hints of blue kind of from the car in the background there. The raster look on the one guy, and then yeah, it's very interesting. Like the two halves of the picture, you got the silhouette thing down the bottom and the bright building in the background. Anybody else have any thoughts on the image?
And it's definitely another high contrast lighting challenge. There's so much light coming onto the bricks on that wall there. It first grabbed me as whoa, but as I look closer at it, I do like the effect that it's a semi silhouette. The green t-shirts are drawing me in. So it certainly creates a mood. As I say, at first it was quite harsh and I'd say almost assaulted my eye with all the brightness there, but then that draws me down and makes me look and wonder what is going on there. Are they happy or are they protesting?
Yeah. Any other comments? Whose image is this, Doug?
This one's from Chris Cook, and it's a street festival.
Yeah, probably Montreal, knowing Chris.
Yep, probably.
I don't think Chris is.
And that high contrast look.
Yeah. Well, you know whose picture this is. This is Christmas morning every year at our house. Except the dog isn't always trying to get the dinner, the cinnamon buns. The goal when I took this was action, capturing the morning. You can tell it's like 5 o'clock in the morning as usual on Christmas Day. The dog loves butter, as you can tell. I wanted the high angle to get all the detail. And yeah, comments, please.
I like the dog's wink.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has a butter fetish.
Was she getting any there?
Not quite. Sometimes she does. She's really good at hanging off Fran's hip with one claw and then getting up as high as she can to get onto the island.
Crazy.
Needs a longer tongue is what she needs.
Yeah, well, she's working on it, don't worry. Yeah, it's just a special occasion. It's like, man, we haven't gone anywhere for a special occasion lately, so Christmas morning will have to do.
I think you did very well with this, Ralph, especially with the dog sticking his tongue out. That's your action right there.
Yeah, I know. I have pictures with the tongue not out, but I like the one with the tongue out better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you accomplished it.
Yeah. Next image, Doug. Ooh. I love the smiles. I mean, weddings should be about smiles, and that's what they've captured here, this photographer. It's nice and sharp, well exposed, good skin tones, but really it's the smiles and the facial expressions that really do it. I suppose another picture would be just going for the top part for that, but we got the dog as well too. Good exposure, and I don't know, like I said, I think the best part about it is it smiles. Comments?
I agree with you, Ralph. Now that dog must be fairly important for it to be part of the wedding party.
I would think so. I think it would have been hilarious if the dog was yawning or something, but it's good. They captured the whole wedding party. Great exposure. I mean, look at the white on the dress. It's really nicely done. And they've chosen a good background. It's not distracting at all. It shows the environment, shows their bouquet really well. And yeah, it's a good one. Whose image is this, Doug?
It's actually mine. It was done in August of 19. It was really the only, my first and only attempt at doing a wedding, and it was friends. And it was a pretty easy one to do. This was the bridal party. There wasn't a whole pile of people, and the smiles were like that from start to finish. They never changed. So
Do you know what lens you shot that with?
Pardon me?
You know what lens you shot that with?
I think it was 16 to 80, which is on a crop sensor camera.
Great.
So 24 to 100 and something.
And you're on the
But
short.
I don't know exactly what focal length I used.
It looks a little long to me, so I think if you had it backed up and used it more on the 80, it would have been, I don't know.
It was probably about the mid-range. So I'm guessing it was maybe in the mid-range, somewhere in the 50 range. I would.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Looks
Chris Miles especially is awesome.
Hmm. That is cool. It's probably some event that's not happening this year. There's so many events not happening this year. That is very well exposed. I think that's the thing that really grabs me is the exposure is, I mean, they're shooting against a black sky or black something or other, but she's and lit up artificially, but she's just right. Great angle. You can see her eyes, see the smile. The guy on the left I find quite intriguing too. I mean, even though the things are flying in front of his face, he's got a intense expression going on. Things are happening here. In the stuff in the sky, like the exposure, the shutter speed's enough to blur them slightly, which is lets you know they're just falling. They're not just hanging there in space. And they seem to balance that big black area off on the right very well. And the costume woman on the bottom right kind of helps lead your eye up to the girl and then back down to the guy. So it's a nice little pyramid going on. Yeah, very cool. Comments?
Nice strong image.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of punch. It's another example, like I commented about the smiles in the last one. It's again, you know, in a portrait, the face, the eyes, the smile is definitely what you want. Whose image is it, Doug?
Chris Notes.
Ah, Chris. Tell us about your image, Chris.
This was taken in Mazatlan during Carnival, and the story behind it is probably better than the story of the picture. It was we were told to be there really early, so we got there about 7 hours ahead of time to the parade location and stood there on the street. And then when things started getting closer, the crowds gathered around us, and then they decided that they had to make a pathway through the crowd for police. So they pushed everybody around, and so we just kind of fought to keep our position, and we were right up front in this parade. And with the pushing crowd, my wallet disappeared.
Mm.
So that was the result of this. For the rest of the holiday in Mazatlan, I was supported by my wife.
So how much did this shot cost you, Chris?
Actually, well, quite a few pesos.
Yeah. I'm sure the police were helping, right?
No.
Yeah. Did well though. Good picture. Well, this is interesting. I'm trying to imagine what special event this is. And of course, I'm imagining what is this and how did they do it?
Give a guess.
Okay. Love the shapes, the colors. I find the exposure in the center a bit blown out. And I find the background intriguing because I can't figure out what it is. Also, it's photographed on a mirror or something. Not sure what the occasion is, but it looks like fun. Looks like something to do during COVID. Maybe that's the occasion. Any other comments about it? Is this your image, Rolf?
Yeah, it is.
Tell us about it.
That is taken in Chihuly's Gardens in Seattle. Mr. Chihuly is a famous glass artist, and he has a whole museum full of different displays, and it was quite hard to pick one since, yeah, they are absolutely stunning.
What's the
Now
scale? Like, how big is this?
It's a real boat.
Holy shit! Wow.
Yeah, so these glass balls you see there's are probably 1.5, 2 feet in diameter, some of them. And it was all set in a black glass background. So that's why you get the reflections in the back.
That is interesting. It's like, I could have swore it was a tabletop type thing.
Yeah, it was a very special event to see that exhibition there for us. I mean,
what was the lighting they had going on there? Do you remember?
Oh, it was spotlights pointing on the subject to really bring it out.
Yeah, it's hard to photograph for sure, because take down the exposure, then some of the darker areas you would lose it so much. But
yeah.
It's like in the churches for weddings, the worst time is when they have a fairly dark church and they have spotlights on the couple and on the minister, and that is so hard to take pictures of.
It looks like you handled this one quite well, Rolf.
I really like the reflections in the dark glass.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you ever make it to Seattle, it's definitely worthwhile seeing. Yeah, he has incredible work displayed there.
Yeah. Their library is great too.
Yeah.
It's stunning. So next image, Doug. I suspect a graduation. Our smiles, gotta like it. Tough photographic situation, bright sunlight, but handled well. I like the choice of having the bookends in the picture, kind of the two graduates and the smiling family members, I guess, in the middle. I'm not quite sure. You don't really know the story going on here. Got some trees kind of framing a bit. Perhaps move the little crowd a little bit to the left or shuffle the photographer a bit to the right so it's not actually touching the hat. But yet again, they've captured the eyes and the smiles, which are really the goal for the day, I suspect. Yeah, tell us about tell us more about the picture, people. Comments?
Whose is it?
John Anvik, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually just after their graduation last year, which was an interesting graduation ceremony given COVID. They set up a stage in the middle of the Chinook parking lot, and then you had to stay in your car. But this was taken, this was just kind of taken at the park down the road. One thing I didn't realize at the time, but my kids pointed out, is that the two girls, my two daughters, are actually wearing the colors of Chinook. So that was unintentional, but yeah. That was, as was commented, there's not a lot of occasions with COVID in the last year, so this is what I found.
It was challenging, wasn't it? Short of shooting a wedding that had like 5 people or a funeral of 5 people.
Yeah.
That's what you get. But we're all gonna remember it. Well done. It's good.
The last one.
It was. Well, it was a challenging year for special event pictures, people, and I think everybody did an okay job.
I've got quite a few entries. I wasn't too sure how many we would get with that one. So I think that's about all. We have the field trip on Saturday. If anybody wants to head down to Henderson around 4 and meet in the parking lot of Jaffe's Gardens, if you want to meet up, I guess, right? Sigrid?
by the swimming pool where that building is, where people go to pay.
Okay, great. So
I
like
think-
swimming pool, or is it all occupied right now?
I don't know, somebody I talked to just before the meeting said, there's construction there, you know, and I'm like, I don't, so.
Yeah. Well, we can find each other there anyways.
People wandering around with cameras, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Started
I think most of the construction is by the Japanese garden,
Yeah.
in front of the Japanese garden.
Okay, then we should be
I
able to
don't-
find it.
John has a question about ND filters. John, what's your question about ND filters?
Yeah, neutral density filters. I was out shooting in sort of snow yesterday when it was kind of bright, and so I had a neutral density filter on my camera, but it wasn't very. Because I was taking a photo of a waterfall and it still wasn't slow enough. My question is, do people have any experience with stacking these filters? And have you just any experience with that? It was just a thought I had. And I thought I'd open it up for discussion or see if anyone knew anything about it.
Mike Benishowski will now answer this question.
I was gonna say Ian, but I think Ian went and popped out on us.
Mike still here?
You know, I am, Ralph, but I do not have one that I
really
that I can tell you. Yeah, that I can tell you that I've used. I have experimented with one, but I had no luck with it at all for figuring out what the right length should be. It wasn't. It was that what it was not giving me a reading just through the lens.
I have several of them. The variable neutral density works very well unless you're taking awfully long exposures. They work well for short exposures, and stacking standard neutral densities works fine. They can be stacked up to 3 or 4 deep if you want, depending on what you've got. Just depends on if it tightens up the edge of your frame at all by adding space to the front of your lens. That's the only determining factor. And if you have a through the light meter, they'll read perfectly. As far as all mirrorless cameras go, there's absolutely no issue with neutral density filters whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was just something that kind of occurred to me today. And, buying, it might be cheaper to buy a set like 3-stop filters as opposed to buying like a 10-stop filter. And so I was just wondering about it. Thank you.
Just depends on what you want to do with it.
As another option, there's also a iPhone app that tells you how many seconds to go with it, with different ND filters.
Oh, okay. Thanks, guys.
So Ronnie has on here that slim filters work fine for stacking. So that's kind of what you said, right? If somebody said that, didn't they? If you get a neutral density filters that are slimmer than the other ones, don't have such a big ring on it or whatever, then they should work better. Is that right, Ian?
They just cost a lot more money, that's all.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions you guys got, or things you want to do, or anything? All good? Then we will call it a night, and I might even make it out to this field trip, I think.
Hey.
Hey.
It's David. I just wanted to add something, Sigrid. The parking lot in front of where you normally park for Nikayuko is pretty much taken up with.
Gerard, I think you must have a radio on or something.
Sorry, that was David talking.
No, Gerard's got noise coming on. There he's.
David, you were talking, sorry, David, I went and muted you because I thought that was you that was back tracking, or the sound was coming. There you go, sorry.
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah, somebody else's was.
Okay, I just wanted to say that the normal parking lot on Mayor McGrath in front of Nikayuko, that's full of construction material, so depending on how many people are going there, you might find that there's a shortage of space. You might have to park towards the golf course, where it continues on. But the other option is to find a parking lot on the Parkside Drive side. One of those lots there.
Wasn't
Or
that
I
where
guess
the swimming pool entrance is?
Yeah, the one at the swimming pool would probably be a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the good one there.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
So I'll go then, and sounds like I'm backtracking here. Anyway, so we Lee had sent. He said that there was a card that he's going to send you guys, and I see he has sent it to me. So I'll get it in an email to you, and that's about all. So maybe see you Saturday, and have a great few warm days coming up. I hope.
Thanks,
Good
Laurie.
day, everybody.
Thanks, Laurie.
Bye.
Thanks, Orly. See everybody.
See you.
Bye.